everybody. Welcome. Good morning to Archetype. My name's Josh Herman. Nice to see you all here. Excited to be working on some stuff today. We're going to be continuing our work on our magician today. If you've never seen the stream before, welcome. We're going to be making a character. We're on a series of 12 characters. This music, this vibe is so much more intense than I expected it to be, but I'm happy to have the energy. Hopefully you can all hear me. Hopefully you can actually hear the music. If you can't, please tell me in the chat and I will answer it. If you've never seen the stream before, basically we're making a series of 12 characters throughout the year. We're on character 4. Right now we're working on the magician. I'll share my screen with you really quickly so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But this is the 12 archetypes here. This wheel here. We're making our way through this. Making our way. Caregiver, artist, sage. We've already done all those. We're on the magician here, kind of down here in the orange. We're working on that one today. And we're going to continue that. So far, in this character, this is our third stream out of probably 4 streams for this one before we completed it. We have started with our inspiration and sketches. We've moved down to our modeling and sculpting. We moved to some lighting and composition, which we did in Unreal. And then today we're going to be doing some UVing, some texturing, and also integrating it into the scene. If you don't know what they look like, this is what the previous scenes look like. So this is the creator or the artist. This one is the caregiver. This one is the sage. When we get further into this, I'm never doing this again. We're not going to go through 12 of them. And this is my art station. If you want to check that out, you're welcome to. You can also, of course, as always, follow me on Instagram, and that's totally cool as well. So here we are. We're going to be working on the magician. We're going to be doing a little bit of work in that today. This is the scene that we have been working on in Unreal. So this is our character that is loaded up in Unreal here. So we can see this is our magician. And this is our proxy mesh, meaning we're not actually going to be using that. But that's this character here. We're going to continue working on this today. Now, we didn't set all this scene up. So we have a little cottage here with some trees and some other stuff playing around here. We can do different settings and other things in here. We'll be doing this in a later stream, meaning the next stream. Today, we're going to be finalizing the character in Zbrush. We're going to be painting. We're going to be posing. We're going to be finalizing the details so that we can get this character in this scene and not really have to touch it again. So if you're wondering, you can go back and watch the previous 2 scenes and watch me sculpt the character more or less from scratch to get to the point of where it is now. The stream before this was where we set up everything in Unreal, and today we're going to finalize our character. So here we are in Zbrush. We're going to be working on this character today, finalizing this character. We also have a little scepter thing here, so we'll be working on all this. Our goal today is to finalize the details in the character, paint the character, and pose the character. And then if we get lucky, we'll try to export it into Unreal and see if we can have that all be done. So that's what we're working on today. Hope everybody's doing well. And good to see you all. Hope everybody's doing good. I see a bunch of people joining the chat, which you are actually this way. Hi, everybody. Welcome. If you have questions while I'm working, please ask. If you just have general things you want to talk about, please talk. Otherwise, you're just going to listen to me stream of consciousness speak for 2 hours. So that's what we'll be doing. A lot of Del Toro vibes in this character. Yeah, this is definitely more sort of Del Toro, Diablo. Definitely more going on in that way. I am going to turn on, and I'm going to check before I do this, because if you've seen the stream, you've seen me have this problem. We have room. Okay, cool. I'm going to load up my Camtasia, which is my screen recorder. The reason I'm doing this is so that on the next stream, and if you want to follow on Instagram or TikTok or any of those things, you'll see a quick recap of the work that I did today. But today we have way too much to get into, so there's no recap. But I'm going to get this thing loaded up so we can just record this thing. New recording. Great job, Josh. Okay. Let's just do it. Here we go. Boom. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into details, and then we're going to jump into painting. Painting, color-wise, I'm thinking some sort of a deep purple. It's going to kind of go into a more fuchsias at the ends and edges like that. Probably some speckling or almost leopardy spots. We'll be getting into that, of course. But that's what we'll be doing. Kane from Facebook says, hi, how are you? Awesome lesson. Thank you very much. Here to learn again. Thank you. I'm excited to work on this character, so let's get into it. First, we're going to finalize details. We're probably going to spend 30 minutes on that. I don't want to spend a crazy amount of time. I want to spend a lot more time on painting. But if we zoom in on this, you'll see that some of the details don't really hold up, meaning none of them. That's okay. We're going to switch to our damn standard brush. We're going to turn that intensity up to 65 because I like it to be aggressive. And what you'll notice is that this mesh is actually a Dynamesh mesh that has been used with Sculptris Pro. Sculptris Pro basically adds detail where you need it, not overall, so we might need to adjust some of the things that we've done here to get this level of detail, which is totally fine. I also know that sometimes this can cause performance problems. Here's a perfect example of that. This seems like a relatively low piece of geometry, because you can see the size of these polygons here, right? But there are some subdivisions. This is the lowest subdivision, and when I did Sculptris Pro in this area, I added some detail here, and then I added subdivisions. What that meant is at the lowest level, it's 24,000. At the highest level, even though I only have this much detail over here, it's still 2 million polygons. So I need to find some ways to get the geometry to be more even, reproject, and add more details, and that's a lot of what we'll do really quick at the beginning. So if you've never seen that process and you don't know how to do that, we're going to do that now. So let's do it on these horns first. What we're going to do, we're going to isolate this. I like to use solo mode. You can create a hotkey for this, but this is the one that I like to use right here, right above my head. This one. I have a hotkey for that. I'm going to duplicate this object so that I have a backup. The reason is because eventually I'm going to duplicate, or I'm going to change the mesh, and I'm going to delete it, and those are not undoable actions. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go Z remesh 5. This is the target polygon count. That'll make it about 5,000 polygons. That's fine. And then we'll start over. I don't need it to be at that high res, or at least on this level of detail, because you see there's not a huge difference. So I'm going down to where the silhouette changes, which is going to be fine here. And we'll do that one more time. That'll just speed it up for the stream. What you're going to notice as soon as this is done, it's going to have a lot better geometry. And we actually need to create nice geometry with UVs so that we can texture it and paint it. And then we can export it as an FBX so it can go into Unreal. The FBX exporter for Zbrush requires that you have texture maps to send things to Unreal, because Unreal cannot handle the vertex painting that Zbrush uses at its base. So here we go. Now we have our horn. This is our nice mesh. You'll see it's evenly distributed. I don't need even most of this, but I'm going to leave it in there just because. And we're going to go, at this point, we're actually going to open up our Z plugin. We're going to kick this over to the side. We're going to go to our UV Master plugin. I'm going to say unwrap. If I had subdivisions, I would need to work on a clone, but because this is a mesh that doesn't have that, I don't need to do that. So it's already done. It's unwrapped. If we hit this flatten button, you'll see what this looks like. It's not the most beautiful of UVs. It's not going to utilize the texture space that large. So I'm going to undo this really quickly. Well, undo the flatten first. And we're going to see if we can get some different things here. Let's try control painting. We want to attract from ambient occlusion. We'll want to create those seams there. And let's paint some attract here. Basically, I want to create a big seam in the middle. If I create a big seam in the middle, it was trying to keep it together. It has some issues sometimes, but we'll just flay it out, but it won't actually create larger, nicer geometry. So let's try that unwrap one more time. This is super fast. It's going to be done within seconds, so it's done. Let's hit flatten. Still kind of did the same thing. To be honest, it's okay. I'll just use a larger texture map size. But if I need to, I'll go back and change that. So now we've got this. I'm going to hide all these other subtools and turn off solo mode. So now we see the purple mesh here is the one that we just created, and this kind of fuchsia mesh here is the one that we want to add the details from. What I need to do is come in here and switch to a different thing. And we're just going to add some geometry. I'm going to add 2 levels of geometry just to be safe. It's pretty smooth. It looks pretty nice. What I'm going to do now is show everything. This is our one that we want the detail from. This is what I want the detail to. I'm going to go geometry. It's under subtool, project, project all. So there we go. It's already done. So this is it without the details. This is it with the details. There's some areas here because the mesh it was coming from was faceted, meaning it was low poly. Those things are coming across. So I'm going to have to smooth this out and do some detail work with that. That's fine. We'll do that today. But this process is what I'm going to do through everything today over on our subtool list, which is over here, right? So if you have questions as I'm working on this, I'm just going to jam through all these real fast. We're going to do that, but please ask. Now, what am I doing with the previous mesh? Good question. This one that I just transferred away from can be gone. It's deleted. I don't need to have this. This is why I duplicated it, and this is why I need to be very careful when I do this operation, is because if you delete, this is not undoable. So all the work I did in the past 5 minutes is moot. It's gone. It's gone forever. So I always don't click this OK one, and I just make sure that this is the right mesh that I want to delete, and I do that. All right, let's show the next mesh. I need to do this to all of these. The reason I need to do this to all of these is, first off, I need to create UVs for all of them, and creating UVs for a 300,000 poly object is not going to be ideal. So I need to run through and just do this super quick. So let's duplicate the object, show them both. Great. Oh, not for now. Let's come in here. Let's do geometry, Z remesh. 5,000 should be fine for this. Shouldn't take too long, not more than a couple seconds. How's everybody doing out there? We just wrapped up our term at Nomen. We are on our break. We have 2 or 3 weeks of break now. If I say 2 or 3, meaning we have a week of makeups. Here's this beautiful mesh here. Look at that bad boy. Let's just go ahead and hit unwrap on that. The only thing I do want to check sometimes on these is I smooth the middles. Sometimes you can get holes in the mesh. I don't know why, but it does happen. So undo that. Unwrap, flatten. There it is. That's our mesh. Unflatten. Great. Going to add a couple subdivision levels. I'm going to make it 1,000,000 polys. That's not a ton, but not too little. I'm going to come over here. Pop on this other thing. This is the one we want the details from. This is the one we want the details to. I can still use solo mode. Solo mode doesn't mean it's not going to be projected. So now I can come in here and do project all. It says it has polypaint. No, we don't need polypaint. We'll be doing that today. There we go. That's our one with geometry. Again, this is kind of faceted, but you can see if I smooth it, it'll have nice details here. So what we're going to do is going to level up the details on everything very, very quickly today. Anybody working on a project out there, or anybody see anything interesting, seeing something fun? Delete this one. Gee, great. All right, this is the pelvis piece. And show the pieces we've finished. That'll be nice. So this one is finished. This one is finished. Let's put those horns. What was it? This one? Just sort them so that it's at the top of the list here. Pelvis. Same problem. You can see just a little process I need to. Do I still add designs even after this? Yes, absolutely. We'll be playing around with that a lot today. Good question, though. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, I'll be playing around with more designs. But part of what I'm doing now is just kind of setting us up for success moving forward. I actually can't show these because it will project them. Ash, you just finished studying anatomy, and now you're studying perspective, reading a book by Scott Robertson. Excellent choice. Excellent choice. Nicely done. All right, we have this now. Now, see, I skipped a step here, and this is important because I got to do this. I forgot to UV this piece. Now I have it. I'll show you the example of this. This is why I UV it before I add the subdivisions. Is if I unwrap, I can create problems. So if I have an object like this that has geometry and subdivisions, but I want to add UVs, what you do is you just hit this work on clone button. It's going to create an alternate version without any subdivisions. And here you can use your unwrap features. Flatten. We'll see what that looks like. Got a weird thing that's shooting off, but that's fine. I can now hit copy UVs. Go back to my actual working file. So this is the file with everything, and I can hit paste UVs. If I flatten now, you see it can't flatten it, but we can do to check. We can go into texture map, create from UV check, and you'll see that this now looks the same as it did before. There's a weird texture on it though, but we'll see if that has any problems. Mr. Dam236, hey Josh, I'm currently starting my first step on Zbrush and I'm doing an alien. Do you think I need extra brushes to achieve? Your model doesn't have a lot of details and you don't know how to add it, maybe a noise brush or something like that. We'll be talking about details a lot today, so stay tuned on that. I will tell you there are some cool fun brushes that you can use that will do the things that you are talking about, but you do not need them. You can sculpt pretty much anything by hand with the Dam standard brush, the clay buildup brush. Any of that stuff will be perfectly fine for you. All right, let's do another one. Duplicate, geometry, Z-remesh. It also depends on the type of texture you want to create. If you just want to create pores, simple pores, spots, bumps, leathery skin, there's some stuff in here. I'll show you a couple quick brushes, probably in about 20 or so minutes once I've gone through this process and created all my geometry that I'm going to be working on. This one's taking way longer. I don't really know why. There we go. Looks like it really hurt that edge though, huh? Not super happy with that. Let me just inflate this a little bit. All right, let's show this. So that's our other one. You can see this is why I kind of wanted those spikes. I can also, of course, sculpt them in later, but I don't want to have to fight the program on it. So now that we've done that, we're going to do our quick unwrap. Again, this way I don't have to do any of the fancy work on clone stuff. It makes it super easy. I can also check the UVs to make sure they look good. Great. Add those subdivision levels and hit project all. Now you see it wraps to the surface. Did pretty good job up here. This is a little jacked up. That's fine. I'll sculpt on this later. So I can go to this one, which is the one with all the bad triangles. This is the good one. I don't want to delete this. I do want to delete this. Delete. Okay. Hide. I'm only going to do... actually, that hand's already done. I just need to UV them. So let's go down to the lowest. Actually, first we'll check if they have them to begin with. Texture map. New from UV check. They do, but they're really terrible. So we're going to undo that. Click that work on clone button. We're going to click the unwrap button. It's already done. Flatten to see what it looks like. Look at that. Looks like a pair of gloves. Unflatten. Copy. Back to our scene. Paste. UV map. Sorry, not UV map. Texture map. New from UV check. Looks like we have those sweet gloves on. We're good. So we got to do that one more time for this other set of arms. I could use the same texture map, but I don't really want to. So I'm going to do the same thing. Go to the lowest. Work on clone. Unwrap. Flatten. Great. Unflatten. Copy. Copy. Come back. Paste. Go to higher resolution. Texture map. New from UV check. Great. Sweet gloves. That one's done. We only have 12 and we're already 6 down, so this doesn't take too long. This is our face piece. I'm going to make it multiple meshes. It doesn't really matter in the end for what I'm doing here. I will do a little bit of paint over at the end in Photoshop, so it's okay if it's not exactly perfect. All right. Got a question. Hey, there, is it beneficial to choose industry standard softwares to learn early on for environments and props? You are learning Blender, but you're kind of skeptical about it. Thank you for the question, Gaming Geek. Appreciate that. It doesn't matter when you're starting. I'll just get the answer out there very quickly. It doesn't matter. You're learning fundamentals. You're learning the basics of the thing that you actually want to learn, right? So, no, it doesn't matter. Eventually, yes, you will want to learn industry standard softwares. If you want to work in the industry, there's a reason they're called that, right? But if you want to learn the basics of modeling, the basics of texturing, materials, lighting, rendering, all the animation, rigging, all that stuff, you can do that in Blender, no problem. You can even sculpt in Blender, no problem. So I wouldn't sit there and feel like you need to learn another program right away, especially as you're learning. It's all the same stuff, just in a different manner. The analogy that if people have seen the stream before, the one that I like to use quite a bit, is you take your keyboard, you know English, or you've used a keyboard like this before. This thing's taking a while, so I'm going to do this move. You've seen a keyboard. This is what it looks like, right? We got numbers, we got letters on here. Pretend that this is Blender, right? And I have another keyboard over here, which is Maya. The difference is I'm going to take all the keys out, I'm going to mix them up in my hand, and I'm going to put them back in a different order, and then I have to learn to type. It's all the same keys, it's all the same functions, it does exactly the same stuff, but the problem or the difference is it's just put in a different way, or it's called a different thing. Something like enter might be called return. Backspace might be called delete. That kind of stuff. You have to learn all that stuff, and that's kind of the annoying part of the process. This thing is taking so much longer than I expected to. I'm a little concerned because we didn't save, so I need some cross fingers here. I'm knocking on wood because it appears. Oh, it didn't do anything. I just exited. That's actually better than nothing. All right, we're just gonna do a quick save. All that work would have been gone, and that would have really reset the stream in a pretty terrible way. I'm going to go down one subdivision level, and we're going to try that Z-remesh one more time. And I'll make this full screen again. It's going across here. This one is probably having some troubles because of this area right here. What I did, which is causing the problems, in case you've ever dealt with this, is I inflated the mesh. What that can do is it basically takes the mesh, and we'll see that it's causing some issues here. It takes the mesh, and inflate doesn't just bring it up, it actually overlaps it and intersects it so that it cuts through. Now this is fine for sculpting, just raw sculpting if you're doing illustrations and stuff like that. But when you create this intersection, what it does is Z-remesh has a lot of problems because it's trying to create a smooth surface across the top, and you basically created a weird balloon that exists inside the body. And now it's trying to calculate, is it a straight surface? What is the surface of that? And it gets a lot of problems. So this is clearly having some issues. So let's undo. There we go. I'll show you how I'll fix this. So we're going to get in here in this little eye pocket here. Now, as you can see kind of over here, right? This area, I'll switch to a less aggressive shader so we can see a little bit better in here. This is where I inflated it. Now, it created some pretty cool textures. But this is the problem that I'm almost 100% positive that Z-remesh is having issues with. Now, I have another version of the mesh right here, so I don't need to worry about doing what I'm doing, like destroying the mesh or feeling like I've destroyed the mesh. In fact, I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to switch to a different brush. I'm going to do my smooth brush. I'm going to choose my smooth, stronger brush. This is just a much more powerful version. And I'm going to fill this with the clay brush. I kind of equate this to surgery. Sometimes when you're working on these meshes, you need to create clean versions. And there was some pretty gross stuff in there. You just got to clean it out. So we're just going to put a little surgery on this bad boy. Let's see if I can help it out. Let's try now. If there's any other little areas like that, I might just kind of hit it real quick with this smooth. Don't want to lose all the detail there, but I do want some of it. All right, let's try one more time. Z-remesh. See a couple more people joining the stream. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully you're coming back or welcome for the first time. Hi. We're working in Zbrush. We're doing some cleanup work on this mesh, and then shortly, probably I'm hoping as soon as we can get through this, we'll be jumping into painting detail or sculpting details and then painting and then posing. But we're waiting for this little bar to go across the top, and it did, because that is an easier area if we zoom in. Easier area to focus on. Now you see there's this weird thing here. The hell is that? I don't love that. Let's try just Z-remeshing again. Also, I just realized this because I'm a big dum-dum and didn't think about it. There's also two meshes. I didn't even recognize that was two meshes, so it was also having to calculate that twice. We'll leave this as is. We don't need to do that again. We're going to come over here on our left-hand side, which you can't see anymore, so I'm going to switch it over here. Unwrap. Flatten when it's done. Perfect. Add some subdivision levels. We'll add 2 or 3. We'll start with 2. Show everything, and we'll hit our project all button. I like to work my way up sometimes if there's a good amount of detail. See, it's causing these issues here. We'll have to sculpt these out later. We'll add one more layer of detail here, and then we'll do project all one more time. It's going to have the same issues, and we're going to end up sculpting on the face anyways. Oh, it's thinking about, we got the blue wheel. What do I think of VFX modeling workflow? Good question, but can you help clarify what you're talking about? What part of the workflow are you curious about? I'm curious about my opinions on. There we go. This one is good to go now. A little bit of work we can do cleaning this up, but we're in a pretty good state. I have like a nose spike in here that I'm cleaning up. That's just from the projection. Great. This is perfect. This one is not. It's a bad, good, delete the bad. And because I'm paranoid after all the delays in that, we're going to do some more saves. Go down to this headpiece. Same kind of thing. So we're going to come in here and we're going to say duplicate. We're going to come over here and we're going to say geometry Z-remesh. Like scan and retopo kind. I mean, I think the scan and retopo kind of workflow is great, especially, I mean, it's in a lot of ways it's kind of a necessity if you're going to be doing any kind of work that is based on real things. It's so much faster to do that. Let's unwrap this. Flatten to check it out. That'll do. Add some subdivision levels. And we'll do our project all. This is what it looks like. Great. So we have our good one. We have our bad one. Delete the bad one. Only 3 more pieces to go, everybody. Sorry, I know this is getting a little tedious, but we got to do it. This one's already done. So I'm going to check it and go to, this is because I used a base mesh in case you're wondering why. UV check, it's going to have bad UVs, so we do need to do that. All we got to do is hit our work on clone. We're now in the clone. We can unwrap, flatten it, unflatten. I could create some base off of polygroups, which might be better for these legs. Add polygroups, unwrap, flatten. You'll see now they get a lot more texture space. Copy UVs, come over to the body, paste the UVs. New from the UV map, that's fine too. You could also use UV check. Any of these, they create textures that are basically tests. So that one is good. Add some more geometry to that. And we'll continue down the list. Just a couple more. All right, duplicate. If you haven't seen this already, you're probably getting pretty sick of me saying it all, but geometry, Z-remesh. Jason Chow, what's up, sir? Good morning. Hope you're doing well. Finalizing some of our meshes here so we can actually do some final textures, detail textures, meaning details with texture on the mesh, and then some color maps. There we go. Let's quickly UV master unwrap that. Flatten. That'll do. Unflatten. Add some geometry to it. Show the previous one. Project all. There we go. Looks pretty good. So we have our good one and our bad one, and delete the bad one. Last piece. We do have our scepter, which I don't know if I'll spend too much time on today. Probably just separating it into some different pieces, but we'll see how much time or how we do on that today. Last piece, duplicate, Z-remesh. This is one of the benefits of using base meshes, by the way, meaning like if you're already doing this kind of stuff, it's just a lot faster. As you can see, we've already spent about 30 minutes in the stream just cleaning up the meshes. It's just part of the process, but it is important. Now, we have every mesh in here with proper UVs, good texture maps, and it is ready to move on to the next step. So this is a huge element of this, right? I think getting to this point where we can actually work is big. I could have done this off stream. Full disclosure, obviously, I've done a lot of work on these characters off stream, but I found that, or I thought that maybe just showing it once, like fully through the process, would be helpful for people to see how we do that. So now we're going to finalize the actual surface textures and some of the details. So we're going to spend probably the next 30 minutes. We're going to break this stream into 4 30-minute chunks. The first 30 minutes was prep and setup and saying hi. The next 30 minutes is going to be sculpting on the objects, adding final textures and details. The next 30 minutes will be colors, and the next 30 minutes will be posing. That's what we're aiming for. Hello, Jason. Do modelers get your concept model and work from that? Good question. Often the answer to that is yes. If you're doing concept art and you're doing 3D, it is pretty common for people to get your concept model as well as the illustrations that you hand over. All right, let's add some details in this. Somebody was asking about some details earlier. I think it was... Who was it? We were talking about somebody. Mr. Jam236 from YouTube. Hopefully you're still here. Let's talk about details. We'll use the head as a quick example here as some ways to make details. So first off, you have to have a good amount of polygon count. That is important, meaning if I start doing sketches here, I need to be able to have pour level or whatever level A detail I need. Right? Do I concept model in Zbrush? Yes. Yes, I do. I'm going to add another subdivision level so I have a little bit more detail in here. Some of this is being hidden in here, which I don't really need, but that's okay. So there we go. We have this piece. All right. Now, quick things about textures and details. There's a couple brushes that I like to make, and these are all basic stuff you can do by yourself without any add-ons, without any plugins, without anything. You can do this pretty basic right out of the box with Zbrush. So you can go to your stroke. You can choose spray. You can go to your alpha, and you can choose alpha 7. This is basically a bunch of dots. There's another version of this, which is alpha 23. Either one is fine. You want the ones with lots of dots. What this does is it creates a spray pattern with a spray nozzle. This is very much like an airbrush, like a traditional airbrush. So we'll go to, maybe we'll find like a more, less detailed section of the body. This arm is going to be great. So there's not actual detail here, right? It's just kind of a smoother surface. What this does is this spray brush creates this type of a texture. Now this is a little heavy, right? If I want to smooth this, I'm going to go to my smooth brush and turn it way down because I'm using the stronger brush. If I come in here, I turn to the wrong brush down. Caps lock. There we go. There we go. The smooth, stronger brush is no joke when it comes to intensity. So this is what it could look like. Oh, dear Lord. 20, right? This is like a base setting. This is detail. If we smooth this out, you can start getting some nice little texture. Smooth it out in the areas where it's going to receive more texture or not more texture, right? Another thing you can do is hold down Alt. This will give you something that's more like pores. My recommendation is to go over it once with bumps sticking out and once with bumps sticking in. And this will give you a pretty basic out-of-the-box texture. Again, you can smooth this as well. And this will give you something that's kind of got a little bit of a traditional, natural, pory skin texture. This works, and again, that's straight out of the box, just using spray. And this, you can use alphas, of course, on top of this and layering it to your heart's content. That's fine. Another brush you can use is the layer roll brush, or the layer brush. If it's not here, let's actually see if it's renamed the layer pattern brush. Layer pattern has other textures on it. That's not the one that I want, but you can see. We'll switch to another part of the arm. You can create some fun textures with this as well. If you're just looking for surface details of something, the nice thing about this is it's not going too far off. I don't want this guitar right now. Let's switch this song. This one gives it like a nice overall texture. Okay. And from a distance, that actually looks pretty solid. I might end up using that today. Pretty much the same type of quality as here. So we can use that. I like that one. Let's go into our light box. Let's go to our brushes. Let's go to our layer. And we're going to find our layer roll. Layer roll has this sort of hatch pattern. If I come in here and I start rolling across the surface, you'll see that this will create a couple sort of lined textures. This can be fine as it is, but this can be really great for leathery skin. What I mean by that is we'll turn down the intensity of it. 5. Maybe a little light so you can actually see it. We'll go to 10. Go back and forth on the object. So I'm just going like this across the surface. It creates that. If I go back across it the other direction, we create something that's even more leathery. So all of these combined are all things that are out of the box. So this is just our basic standard brush, right? This is that layer pattern brush. And this is our layer roll brush. All of these work. And we're going to actually use all these today. So let's start on the arm. We already did, right? So I'm going to just go quickly. Now that I'm not having to demo it, we'll go quickly and we'll just kind of go across the whole entirety of the surface. I'm going to be toggling off and on the rest of the model. I don't need to texture parts of the body that I'm not going to see. I like this sort of leathery texture. We're going to see what that looks like when I combine it with this. Not bad. We could probably turn it up a little bit. We'll make it like 15. So now we're getting kind of a hatch mark on that as well. Just kind of go across the surface, go back across it every now and then. And crevices or cracks where it would be getting more wrinkles. That's how things work. So in a corner or a crack or a crevice where something's going to deform, it's going to have more wrinkles. That can be larger wrinkles, more size. There's all kinds of ways to do that. But just a real quick texture pass, and you'll see how that just adds a little bit of detail. So I'm going to do this as fast as I possibly can, make sure that I have mirroring on. One thing that's important that I like to tell people about textures, meaning surface textures, is it's a lot like drawing on paper. Meaning when you draw on paper for the first time and it's a blank page, it's terrifying, right? You have no idea what you're doing. The first mark you make almost every single time, in my opinion, from my experience, feels like a mistake. And that is not the way to move forward. The key about texturing surface textures like we're doing here is it's all about layers. The first mark you're going to make is going to be the first of thousands of other marks you're going to make on the surface. So don't expect the first one to be perfect. It doesn't even matter what it looks like the first one makes. It's the combination of everything you add on there over time that will make it look and feel like what you want it to be. So even though I'm going over this with layer roll, that might be enough for me on this project. But I know that I'm already seeing areas where I could enhance this, and I'll show you very briefly how we do that. Trying to go in the direction of where the wrinkles and flow of the character or thing might go. The nice thing about the layer roll brush is it being a layer brush. Nope, no to this music. This playlist is taking a turn. Is it doesn't exceed, it doesn't change the silhouette very much, which I'm a big fan of. At this point I can always come in, go back to my layer roll brush. Just do it very quickly, and then we'll just do it after. We'll do the damn standard brush afterwards. Just hit these fingers. Sound effects help. I know it sounds like a joke, but I'm actually kind of serious. I think sometimes when you're getting into a project, if you're really into it, you know, you're really kind of there with it. I honestly find that doing sound effects and having fun with it will make it better and more entertaining and more fun to do. All right, this is probably good on that arm. I've got a nice little bit of texture across the whole thing, looking pretty solid. Let's jump in here with our damn standard brush. It's pretty high right now, that's okay, meaning it's gonna like carve quite deeply. But I'm just gonna come in here now and do some of this work while we're here. It shouldn't take too long to just go across the surface, add some details. I'm not going for the most high-res, beautiful close-up model that you're going to see on 4K on a big, you know, IMAX movie screen here. That's not what I'm going for. I'm going for concept models that are going into, you know, 3D illustrations. So I don't need to see every line in the hand, but it helps for me at least to know that it's there. And, you know, and if I do any poses or close-ups, I don't have to paint that in later. It just feels like it's already there. It's a little bit more natural. Looking at my own hand for reference. Apparently I missed a line there. This is kind of how my hand looks like. Weird monkey's paw. This is the old figure drawing exercise where you look mostly at your hand, look at the reference more than anything else. Now the god of death has my hands. Perfect. We'll do the backs real quick. I'm going to switch to, actually I'll use the damn standard. Just at a little bit less intensity. Hit those knuckles. So they're kind of extra gross. Actually, I'll just switch our standard brush over to a standard style. Turn it up a little bit. That's too much. Does Gnomon offer human anatomy classes? We do. We have figure drawing and anatomy classes, which are the best ways, in my opinion, to learn anatomy. Figure drawing. For artists, of course. You can go through books and do crochets and sculpts, and that's all good too. But I think figure drawing, in my opinion, is the best way to learn the human figure. At this point, while I'm here, just add in a couple quick lines, a couple quick details, so that we can continue to move on. At this point, you could also get crazy with it if we want to get all vascular, add some veins. Having some reference for this is helpful. Veins are something I always used to struggle with too. Veins, surface textures, just like the Taking something that had no detail on it and putting detail on it was always something that I really struggled with, and it was frankly, I think, something that was just because I was afraid of messing up the sculpt that I made. Now I don't really care because I feel like I can sculpt it better the second time, or undo and it'd be fine, or know that nobody's really going to be looking at it all that closely. But all these little lines that I'm drawing, even if they're small, even if they're not noticeable, add to the surface. So that's what I was kind of recalling, if we could say a little bit, talk about what I was saying a little bit earlier, was it's all about texture. Layers and layers and layers of texture. Now I already have one set of arms. I could do this, and this is where I realized I maybe should have just done one set of UVs, but that's fine. I'm going to take this, I'm just going to duplicate the arms. I'm going to then put them symmetrically where the other set of arms is. This is probably one of the biggest powers of 3D, is being able to manipulate things like this. This is the one without texture. Just want to try to make sure I try to get it pretty close. Looks like I had done something to the mesh. I'm trying to figure out exactly the pose I had. It doesn't need to be perfect. We're going to be posing this thing today anyways. It's more of a, how do I get it there again? Why am I not using Dynamesh here? I actually did use Dynamesh, but why am I not using Dynamesh where, I guess is the question, Mr. Dam. Control Z, yes. Control Z is also the huge power of digital. This is the one without texture. Delete. All right, let's get into the rest of the body. We have 15 minutes, is what I said, so we better cruise. I can always come back and do this more, but I want to get into color. So let's go to our layer roll brush. We can add some texture. We can add some detail. I'm going to hide this inside the head. I don't need that. It's our layer roll brush. Get some little details on here. Some of these need to be refined. I'll just say that before they really can get what they need. But defining the surfaces is really helpful. What I mean when I say defining the surfaces, in case nobody's aware of that, meaning, is it skin? Is it bone? Is it metal? Is it cloth? What exactly is it? Ivory? Is it a horn? Is this, a tooth? Is this teeth? What exactly is this thing? And that can help you just quickly to help define the color, the way that you're going to handle it. That can be a really big piece. Not a fan of how that one was going. Let's do this. Soften out some of these facets. That's from the projection. Likelihood we're going to see the back of the head, very small, but we got to do it anyways. Get in here, do a little bit last details before we jump into our color on the face. I'm going to push all of these teeth as well, or whatever these are. These things that appear to be teeth. Give a little texture in the background there. Certain elements are just kind of, like right in here is kind of muddy. I mean, there's just not a lot of detail there. It's going to come in and help define what it is. I'm not super interested if, you know, if I was spending many more hours and weeks on this project, I would get in and define this super clearly. But for today and for this project, because the characters can be seen pretty far away, kind of in like a haze, it doesn't need to be that clear. Make this not symmetrical. And we'll get in here with some of these. I don't like that line I just added. I like it feeling a little bit more unknown. All right. It's fine. Let's do this one. This one kind of looks fine as is, just like the natural nature of what it is. But just making it so it doesn't feel CG is kind of priority number one. Any name for the character? Great question. Not yet. Not just yet. This is the magician. This is the prime deity, or one of two prime deities in this universe that I'm creating as I'm making these characters, and is also basically the god of death. So if you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Just add a little bit of sort of repetition, repeating pattern in here. Let's use that layer roll again. Now, just to be clear with everybody today, this is a fast way to do this. There are nicer, more appropriate ways to do this. But if you just want to have fun and sculpt, you're using your end goal isn't something that needs to really be, you know, perfect. Maybe you're going to do it for an illustration, or maybe you're just learning, or you just want to have some fun. This is totally fine. I think these horns do need to have some sort of a texture to them. Try to keep it in a consistent manner, so I'm kind of like going against the grain here. Let's see. Let's get some of this in here. We'll add another subdivision. Let's not at the highest. Okay. I want to try, I think it was under stroke modifier. Nope. Where's the Interpolate feature? So I was watching a TikTok and somebody was using to interpolate on some horns, and it was really cool. Where are you? Oh, it's right here. 8. All right, let's try this. I want to do this stroke. It's a little heavy. This stroke. Still a little heavy. And this stroke. Text, stroke, interpolate. Oh, that works pretty good. Might have been yours. Matthew Keene, it might have been yours. Hello. That actually is pretty badass. I'm not going to lie, the interpolate feature is pretty cool. Does it think what I just did was a stroke, though? It did. So the movement of the camera is part of that. Kind of like it just being like a textural element, though. It's a little weird to do that, though, isn't it? Let's go back to our stroke. Modifiers, lazy mouse, lazy radius. I like to turn this up. It's a little high, but that's okay. Let's get there. And then we'll just put one like down here, even though it'll go off screen. Let's try that. I mean, not the best. Definitely not the worst. All right, let's continue this. Let's also come in here and like add some damage. Damage. Just that word for some reason is reminding me, not for obvious reasons, but I don't know if anybody's watched Station 11. I just finished watching Station 11. And I really liked that show. These horns will probably need a little bit more. A little bit more time than I wanted to give to them, but they need it. How can you export maximum details from Z with minimal mesh from ZBrush to Maya? Bump map and displacement? Question mark. Yes, bump map and displacement is the way that you would want to do that. Apparently, I missed this whole back section. All right, we could really go much further with these, and I probably should. Just such a central part of the character. I feel like if we don't give it a little bit more, which I mean, to be fair, it does have a good amount of texture now. That'll be fine. How should you approach creating a 3D concept artist portfolio, and how hireable is a 3D concept artist? They are hireable. A lot of people in the concept world do use... What is this song? Oh, that's fine. Yes, it is hireable. Yes, it is something that is done. The key thing is you can't pretend that you're nobody looks, or let me, how do I start this? Hmm. The reality is that nobody looks for just a 3D concept artist most of the time. They're looking for a concept artist, right? So if you're working and you're saying like, I want to be a, a concept artist, or I want to be whatever, um, that's great. But you still need to remember that at the whole point. I can't talk while this fucking song is talking in my ear. It's so weird. You're still a concept artist, right? Your job is to define ideas, to present ideas, and that's really the most important part of your job. So even if you use 3D, you can't be slow. You have to be fast. You have to present many ideas. You have to present many options. You have to be willing to and okay with most of your work never ever being on screen and never being seen. You need to, for lack of a better word, be able to compete with other artists in that space. Meaning, here's an example I was giving one of my students the other day. If you are a 2D concept artist and I say, it's Monday, you have till the end of the week to present some options. I just want to see silhouettes or roughs, right? Thumbnails. You probably could make me 50 to 100 thumbnails in a week. Whereas if you are a 3D concept artist, just by the nature of how much longer it takes to take a design, you might be only able to give me 8 or 5 or 10 concepts in a week. The difference between 3D concept artists and 3D modelers is mostly about resolution of what the final result is and speed in certain parts of the process. So, typically a 3D concept artist will be fast, very, very fast at sculpting, but they're not going to spend a lot of time spending, making sure it looks perfect as I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is 3D concept work. It's not production 3D modeling. Like, that's really important to state that what I'm doing is not production level art. This is for concept art. It could be production level. And creating an illustration in a day or a couple days is fine, but you need to be fast. You need to be able to move fast. You need to be able to iterate and create many ideas. That's probably the most important part of any concept artist job, is you're solving problems for other people. So what does a world look like? What does a design look like? What does a character look like? What does, what, who, where, why? All those things are things you're answering. So if you're prepping or thinking about prepping your 3D artist or 3D concept art portfolio, it's usually helpful to decide on what type that you want to work in. Are you doing characters, environments, vehicles? Are you doing a little bit of everything? You can do that. That's fine. I think any of those can work. But picking what you want, and I think showing people the process of what you're doing is going to be helpful. Meaning the thought process, not the actual work production process. Most production designers or art directors won't really care about that. And then I think for most 3D people, it's also important to say that, yes, you can give them models, yes, you can give them turnarounds, yes, you can give them cool stuff like that, but what they're really looking for is images. They're looking at stills. So even though you're working in 3D, the end result is almost always still going to be a still image. So I don't care about seeing beautiful turnarounds of every concept you have, because I want to see, that's a nice bonus for me, but it's not a necessity. Got a question. The new Final Fantasy's games models aren't game ready. Having enemies that appear in groups having more than 300,000 tries, and a boss has 2 million tries. How could this happen in a production pipeline? I haven't played the game, but when you say that they're not game ready, are you saying like the game crashes when it comes, or does it still play as normal? just so I can help answer the question. I just don't imagine that, Square would. There's slowdowns due to the dense geometry. Is that because you're on a console, or I'm just curious? I haven't heard of this, so I'm more asking questions just because I'm interested. If you're on a PC, which is not my guess, but it's possible, right? They may be aiming for higher specs, but I don't know. How does it happen where the models slow down production pipelines? They may have not had time to create lower resolution ones in their production schedule without delaying the game. Maybe they thought that they would be working off different specs, a different software, and they weren't able to get there. I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah, game engines are great at handling high poly count, for sure. Got a couple people chiming in the chat. Which is more efficient, having a... Wow. Let me try to... I'm just going to put it up here. We can all look at it together. What is more efficient, having a job in a specific studio or being an independent artist who works for many different companies or studios? Which is more efficient? I don't know if there's really an efficiency to that question. I think you might be asking for which is more stable. Meaning which is like a more stable career. I think probably being in a studio, if that was your question, is going to be the answer to that. All right, I am behind on my time here, and I want to make sure we get to painting, at least painting, if we can't get to posing. So I'm going to add just a little bit more on this. Can always come back in. I can always come back in and do more later on the details. But I want to have a good starting point. I basically need to do this piece, and then I think I'm pretty good. That's higher than I wanted. Let's just put little details in here. Let's just show this chest piece. There's some details in this area specifically that I'll need to work out, but I think what we're going to be doing from the paint job side is going to be pretty minimal in some of these regards. So just having kind of a texture is okay for now. I do want to get some of that faceting to be broken up. Come in here with the damn standard brush at the end. These things that are kind of faceted, I'll just kind of hit them with the damn standard brush, which will, I'm basically using the faceting because I liked the faceting when I was sculpting on it to begin with as a plane. So rather than go in and smooth the plane and try to fix it and make it something different, I'm just using what's already there and just adding elements to it. And I find that sometimes when you're doing this type of quick work, that's more than enough. Just playing with what you've got, basically. You're also asking in terms of skill. In terms of skill, I'm sure there are some jobs for entry-level artists. The question I'm having, or that what I'm getting hung up on with your question is you're saying efficiency. But if you're saying like what is in terms of skill, that's a separate question. So are you saying efficiency, meaning like what's more efficient in a pipeline, or are you saying what's more efficient in a production? Just kind of struggling to figure out what the key part of your question is. So I'm happy to answer. I would say that there are entry-level positions for freelance, but they will not be as stable for entry-level people because they're going to be short-term. Skill level is going to range all over the place. There are high AAA elite top-tier people who work entirely freelance, and there are the same type of people who do work for companies. So there's not really a difference there. I think like Craig Mullins, who's a legendary concept artist, has been living in Hawaii for 15 years. So he works freelance, and he's worked on some of the biggest properties of all time. And then there's people, like Doug Chang and Ryan Church, who worked at ILM forever. Ben Proctor, Dylan Cole working on the Avatar sequels for years and years. Like there are some people who are in-house and there are some people who are not, but there's no real separation in the skill gap there. That's what I would want to make clear. When working in production, doing 3D concepts, will they take this sculpt to the production version? David, what's up, sir? Hope you're doing well. Will they take this sculpt to the production version? Usually they'll take this or, and run with it. So whenever I did this work at Marvel or other companies, they'll take it, but they're also taking the illustration that I did, and they're going to plus it based off of that as well. So it's not just this, right? There's some form of, because often, at least for myself, the 3D work that I do and the 2D work that I do don't always align. Sometimes they're a little separate. So they'll have my model, they'll have an idea of where it should go. That'll give them a good starting point to do retopo, to do, the whole pipeline. But at the end of the day, they need it to be in their pipeline, and if they need it to adjust, they will. So I've always seen it as a starting point. They'll use it as a starting point, and I always, if I work with a client, I'll tell them that too. Like, happy to give you my model when we're all done. It's not going to be cleaned up. This is not going to be something that I would recommend that you jump right into, rigging or animation with. You could use it as a proxy for rigging. I'll give that to you early. If you're going to make toys out of it, you can use it as a starting point and maybe even as a jump-off point for sculpting toys. That stuff all tends to work pretty well. But I wouldn't jump into, animating this character for your, your feature. It's not ready for its close-up. So, but often they will take it at least as a starting point for sure to get going. But that's pretty normal. We're about 10-15 minutes over my schedule, which is frustrating, but is fine. This is a very Stranger Things song. Boom, 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 which is probably more John Carpenter, right? Is the Stranger Things similar to John Carpenter? I love that John Carpenter did most of his own music. Good filmmaker, great films, but the music part always kills me. I just love that part. How would you model this change if you were going to make it to toys? Honestly, depending on what the toy is, you don't need to go that much further in a lot of ways. Like, if you were going to sculpt, like for example, a good analogy is 3D printing. A lot of toys are 3D printed. I don't need to do anything different to this to 3D print it. I could probably just, toss this on a printer relatively easily. So if it's going to be a toy, what most of the time will happen is what is the intent of the toy? Is it a Pez dispenser? Is it an action figure that should be articulated? What exactly is the thing that's being done? And that's what will need to be done. So does it need to be in multiple pieces? Does it need to be whatever? Right? All that stuff that comes from that, from like the requirements of the toy, is what will end up being what has to happen to the sculpt. But because a lot of toys use 3D printing as their sort of base starting point for when they do sculpts, meaning they don't sculpt them in clay anymore, or very often. Some do, but most don't, right? They just can work from this mesh. And because this mesh, for example, the way that I liked to measure things was I would say, or to know if something would look good, is I would basically take the object that we have here, right, and I would scale it on my screen to the right size. So for example, on my screen right now, this is obviously going to be dependent and different on your screen, but this character is roughly 1 foot tall, right? So if I were to print this out to be a 1 foot tall action figure, I would know that this, what I see on my screen, is the detail that I would see. So I don't need to necessarily jump in and sculpt the teeth or whatever these things are to poor level, insane levels of detail if this is the scale of the object, right? So again, if this was a Pez dispenser, oh, hi everybody, we're back. I lost all the chat, so if you didn't see anything, sorry about that. Sometimes the stream just kicks me out, and I haven't fully figured out why that is. So if, this is the size of like a Pez dispenser, I think is where I was at, right? This doesn't need to have any more detail on it. It just needs to be 3D printed. It needs to be cut and keyed to fit into whatever it's going to be. So that's really all it needs to do. All right, everybody, let's jump into painting. We finally got into the second part of what our goal was today. Posing might have to wait till a later stream and or off stream, probably off stream. But this is a good starting point where we can start adding color. Am I currently working with subdiv layers? Subdiv or layers for detailing? Great question. No, I am not using layers, but I am using subdivisions. So each one of these has layers of subdivisions to it. Good question. All right, I'm going to save this, version 12, and I'm going to start painting. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn painting on for everything. There's something weird back here. What is this? Just hide that inside the body. We don't ever need to see that. Great. I'm going to turn painting on for everybody. I'm just going to shift click one of these little paintbrushes. Everything will turn white. When something changes to a different material, meaning it's not the material I have selected, that means it's been filled with a material. This can present a problem. So let's go in here to our flat color. You see how even when I'm on flat color, these are having a different thing. I'm going to go to Z plugin, subtool master, fill material. Okay, it's going to run through all of them. It's going to fill them with the flat color. This means we no longer have any material information. We also have no color information, otherwise that would be showing up as well right now. And I'm going to switch to the skin shade. I like to use the skin shade because it is a white base. White base meaning just like a nothing base. The difference between that, I'll show you very shortly. I'll switch this brush. I'll make a spray brush. This is the same one that I was talking about earlier. If you want to make a really great painting brush, sort of very much like a traditional airbrush with a little bit of like a spatter on it, something that's not a perfect sphere, go to your stroke and go to spray, and then come in here and also choose either Alpha 23, which has some dots, or Alpha 7, which also has dots. We'll choose 23 for now. Switch this to RGB, turn that on, pick a color, you can start painting. Now notice that one quick thing as we set up this brush, go away transform palette. It does have some hue differences in it. I'll show you that on flat color. So there's no shading information here, but there is variance in the color. If you like that, great. If you don't like that, you can change it here by changing this color variance intensity under your stroke palette. You can also adjust with these things as well. And scale will adjust, I think, the dots. I've never really seen a big difference there, though. So if you don't like that, you can go to color 0. When you paint, it will paint one color. I like having a little bit. So I kind of go to like point here, 0.16. So it's similar in tone, but there's a little subtle variation. I don't want it to be crazy different. This is actually going to do a little bit of a lifting for us. I'll pick the white. Even if I pick white, you're going to see it's going to add a little subtle variance. That's fine. That doesn't really bother me. I'm just going to clear this out. But this is what we want to have as a kind of a starting clean plate. And the reason, actually, I'll undo that to show the red. The reason we're using this skin shade here is because it's a white base. So when I import it into Unreal, Unreal's using, it doesn't have materials, or it does have materials, but it's not going to have materials that have a base color information surface value to them. So I want to make sure that what I'm using is kind of a clean slate. Whereas if I switch over to the matte caps that I usually sculpt on, like this, you'll see that certain colors, it has a different kind of vibe to it. Right? Any of these things are going to have different vibes to it. And the biggest reason that I don't use these, I'll show you in 1 second, is we'll go back to our skin shade, and if I actually paint in black on this material, you'll see that there's still a specular value to the object. Right? Now, if I undo some of that, we'll keep the black. I kind of like how this red pops with it. But if I go back to one of these colors, black turns into basically a silhouette. Matte caps do not see reflections or light or anything like that in that regard. So what happens very often is that the painting to black, which is what I'm going to use some of that today, you don't know what you're doing in a matte cap. So here, we use a skin shade, and it'll give us a little bit better of that. So we're going to start, we'll just go ahead and paint some stuff black. I want some of this to be black today. I think I want the ends of the hands to be black. And we're going to start to try to find our palette. Got a couple questions coming in. Thank you for asking. Let's see. Hi, Josh. I'm sure Gnomon students are hard at work a lot. What do you think makes them, or even you, work as hard as 8 hours a day? How does someone reach that level of patience? Good question. Thank you. You got to love it. I think that's what I would say, is you have to love it. If it's something you genuinely love, it's not really about being patient. It's about just finding the thing that you like, that you want to spend, that you enjoy spending your time doing. So if you really love this, you'll know. You'll be fine. I'm going to switch the purple. Try to find our purple here. Right now what I'm doing is I don't have any colors selected, so I'm trying to find the color that I want to use today. I really like this deeper purple. Neva from YouTube is asking, do you paint each layer of your sculpt or the form as a whole. I kind of bounce them back and forth, and I do a little bit of both. So I'll work on painting for a little bit, I'll do sculpting for a little bit, but in general, I will work on the whole character as one big object. And that's my preferred way to work because it's just a little easier. All right. Sorry, just setting some stuff up off stream. Well, none of it. Oh, hi, none of it. I said, will none of it. Will Will Noman be at Monsterpalooza this year? Will Noman be at Monsterpalooza this year? Oh, I almost clicked on you and almost blocked you. I'm so sorry. We are planning on being at Monsterpalooza, but we have not confirmed. I like this purple, I think. Let's try a little bit of like a desaturated purple. This would be really dark. The thing that I'm concerned about is that when we get into Unreal, so this is for those who have been watching but don't know what we're actually working on. This is the scene, the starting point for the scene that we blocked out last stream for where the character will be. Any of these things where it's going to be relatively dark, you're not going to see that purple. So what I'm thinking about doing within this in general is also creating some form of like a fire that I could cast light on the character with. I think that would help. So my concern about going with this rich purple is that it might look black. And I'll be painting black, going to purple, and eventually it will just look all black. So I'm going to take this as a secondary color. You can hit C anywhere, and you'll see over here on the left-hand side that my color is changing. That even works over here. I can pick even these icons up here. Color picking works anywhere. So I'm going to color pick this. I'm going to kind of move it into like a bit more of a fuchsia, saturated. And I'm going to try to get it to pop in some of these colors. So maybe in some of these areas it's going to have like this level of saturation. And let's even go a little further. This is not the color breakup, just so you're aware. I'm using just kind of the body as it is right now to help me define what that could look like, to understand what my color palette will be. This could be a nice like transition, so it's going to go from here to here. Let's color pick this. Let's even go like hot pink. So I'm basically creating like a gradient of where I want my main color zones to be. I like that. I think that's the color zones I'm going to use. I could even push it to white if needed, and I think that will help it pop off the background. Question from YouTube. Loving the streams? Thank you. I have a question about how do you get your high-res characters into Unreal 5 looking good without a displacement map? Decimation Master. Decimation Master has been the way to do that. I'm going to take this object, I'm going to duplicate it, I'm going to hide it so I have it. Actually, I'm not going to hide it. We don't need to hide our beautiful palette. This will be our palette, and we'll put it over here. The reason I'm putting it over here is I can basically come over here, paint on this thing, right? Color pick it, and paint it on here. And then you're coming back. There we go. So I like a area here of just painting paletting. All right, let's get into the actual color breakup. I'm going to put this dark purple on most everything first to start. I like to work dark to light, meaning I'm going to choose the darkest areas first, and I'm going to get everything to try to work with them. So it's going to look a little dark to start. I kind of like this little whatever I just did there, so I'm going to leave it there because it's kind of cool. Instead of filling it, yes, I could go to, somebody in their head is saying, why don't you just go to color fill? I'll show you what that is. I can go to color in the top left, fill object. That will fill it with a color. The reason I'm not doing that is I actually like some of this little breakup that spray is doing. Then it's color fill. It's a pure color. Whereas this adds a little bit of a modeling to the color to begin with. So I can come in and use that brush, and it's just adding some variance there for me to do that. And I want to actually see what we're looking at. So we're going to choose, here's kind of a nice one too. This is a plastic shader. There's a couple in here that look pretty good that actually will show you what things look like. So for example, it seems to be gone. Reflected map. I want reflected map. It used to be like plastic B. Yeah, this is a good one. It's a kind of a grayish material, but you can see that these elements that are black are shiny, whereas if we go again into this, it turns into like pitch black and you can't even see it. So I recommend using a material that has a white base or a gray base or something that is just a little bit easier to paint on. When you get it out of the program, it'll look a million times better. So we'll start here with this white one. Where was I? Ah, yes, we were painting. This gives us like a nice little base of color to work from, but also enough variance that it doesn't feel just like it's, you know, kind of the same texture or color the whole time. If the dots are too big, you can come in with a smaller brush size. That will be fine. All right. Let's put areas of color and areas of interest. I do want to put something on the head. Let's try some black on the horns. Let's see what that could look like. Let's try this on the horns too. Immediately, I kind of went to this idea of taking the bright areas and putting them at the tips. This is another way. Maybe, you know, I could do this so that it's more, the edges are bright versus something where it's like the edges are black. I am going to use black for sure as sort of like a device to push the focus in certain areas. I'm just trying to decide if I want it to be, you know, again, try to do this quickly, but basically hide you off screen palette body. This or this, something that would scream that there's a lot of color there. And using this sort of Kirby Crackle speckle, which I actually like quite a bit. Is that what I want it to look like, or do I want it to have more inky black tips? If I do it this way, the highly colored version, I think what I might need to do is to probably fill this with a color, and we'd probably do like a reverse gradient, where this would probably be going to black. What's more common in the industry, freelance or full-time employment? That's a hard question to answer. I would guess full-time. But I know a lot of people that do contracts. That's sort of the third in between there, which is just contract jobs. Basically meaning like I'm going to work for a year, 2 years, 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, whatever the project is. Just sort of like freelance. When people say freelance, I typically imagine that they're working from home, setting their own schedules, not working within a production, whereas contract means that you're typically working inside of production on their equipment with their software rather than providing all that yourself. So trying to pop back to this to think like, will it be more cool? I think it'll be more interesting if the edges are pink purple. Otherwise, you're just going to have like some bits of interest here, which is good. But I think we can find another way to bring interest to. I mean, most of the. There's already enough interest here. So I think this is probably the direction we'll go as far as like a long distance read. So let's continue. Let's add some of that to the face. Let's get some of these other colors up here. Maybe there'll be like a sort of in and out, meaning like there'll be a focal point of purple pink. I think that's how we'll do it. And then now we can get into the actual texture. So, yeah, let's do this. I'm feeling good about this. Let's bring this back to being a more darker color here. What I'm kind of looking for is graphics. I'm looking for graphic shapes. Looking for interesting things. Also thought about putting a glowing something in the character. So I wouldn't be upset if all of a sudden, you know, part of this was glowing, or in Unreal I can do that pretty easily. Let's kind of color pick this and get a couple of these going. I think the graphic for the hands are working, but we've got to keep pushing it. Just going to block out the whole thing, meaning I feel like this area is pretty clear. This area is pretty clear. This area is not clear. This area is not clear. The transition between these elements are not clear. So I need to kind of define for myself what these shapes are going to be, meaning like what color are all these things going to be. Are they all going to be either this color or this color, or kind of where does that start? And once I get that down, I think I can probably define it a little better. But this really is like working on an airbrush. So if you've ever worked on a traditional airbrush, or you've painted in Photoshop quite a bit using soft or, you know, round brushes, it's exactly the same thing. Almost exactly the same thing. Am I on ArtStation? Sheldon is asking. Yes, I am. ArtStation droids for sale. That is me. You can also check me out on Instagram at droids for sale. Same name. CO from YouTube. You're currently learning the basics of ZBrush in your school. Can you recommend any online courses or something similar to become a real ZBrush pro? The first thing that I can kind of show you is sort of our sister company, which would be the Gnomon Workshop. This is a bunch of tutorials. It's subscription based. By category, we'll say digital sculpting. All of these are things that are going to have tutorials that are going to involve Zbrush. And they're all by industry pros. So Rafael Grassetti, or Crystal Sayua, or Maddie Spencer, or Luca Nimolato, or tons of other people. Right? Look, I'm even here. I'm here, and I'm here. So you can check those out, and that's a good starting point for you. All right, let's continue. Right. We have 20 minutes left. I didn't get to as much painting as we want, but we still have time. Kind of want this to be like a slightly darker area. And maybe some of these like areas in here. And what if they were pink though? I'm trying to decide if there's like a reasoning for this pink. This pink fuchsia. Magenta. Meaning, is it like part of the body? Is there a reason that this exists in this character? If so, it can kind of create a rule for myself as to why or where it should go, aside from just trying to make random colors. Kind of like this black. I think we're going to make these pauldrons black. Let's start there. A little too large of a dot. Oops. Hit the wrong body. I'm going to come in and adjust that color to be just a little bit less at this point. Now that I'm trying to be more controlled with the painting, the introduction of it was actually being more harmful. They say you never go to full black, but because full black, real black doesn't exist except for space. So try to be careful and conscious of that. The pure absence of light. So trying to work in this black now. Now that I feel like I've got a decent graphic, meaning I know that I want to have this bright area here, I want to have this bright area here, I need to make sure that when I'm creating these lines and stuff that it's not detracting from the focus. So, you know, me having this little pink area up here at the top looks interesting, but it's sucking away the focus, the focal point from the main character. So I'm actually going to just delete this pink up here. I can maybe get a little touch of it at the tip, but definitely not enough to take from it. I think this kind of area here is starting to come together, and so this is what I'm kind of using as like my starting point for all this. It's like, meaning I think this should be a little darker. And this should be a little darker. Let's get it even a little darker in here. I don't like how the horns are looking. I don't like how the face is looking quite yet, but I think if we can get the idea kind of coming in here. Something we could do quickly. We could try this. Come in here, do masking. Can't read. Masking. Mask by AO or mask by cavity. I'm going to do AO. And do that. Okay, invert the mask, hide the mask. And when I paint, I'm going to make just those dark areas black. So this is Before, after. So I can kind of get a nice little auto shadowing in some of these areas here, which is kind of a nice way to just push some details. So again, after, before. Maybe a little heavy on that, but that's okay. We can do that on everything. So I'm just going through and masking it. I think I just masked the wrong way on that one. Invert that mask, hide the mask, color it. Not a huge difference there. This one will make a huge difference on. So if I come in here and I say mask by AO, it's going to take a little longer. The reason it's taking longer is because you can even see my mouse slow down. Is because this is a 3.7 million poly mesh. I should probably hit escape. Otherwise, we're going to get into the nightmare where we have to wait. So I'm going down one subdivision level, clearing my mask because I think it ended up doing it. Now I'll do it. Now it's doing it on 4 times less the amount of polygons. Invert my mask, hide my mask, and this is where that auto work. I'll go ahead and just paint in this little hole. Hide the mask again. This is also a good way to like not paint on sections, but the mask isn't crazy strong, so get a little bit in there. I think that was a little too broad. It just kind of feels muddy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo all this. Clear a mask. I'm going to do by cavity. Cavity goes faster, so you don't need to go to the lowest. You'll see actually that's all those little details there. The nice thing about cavity is it's really good for this type of texture up here, because you can come in and paint that. It's not really creating the look that I want. Really sharpening the mask. Now you can kind of see a bit more of what it actually looks like. Not the colors that I want, but you see what that feature does, or that function does. Let's go back down to subdivision level. Let's go back to our AO. Let's mask it again. Won't take but a minute. There we go. Invert that, hide that, and let's just add a little bit of this back in here. This is where I want to get that kind of darker purple back in. Which is, I guess, this color. Oh yeah, here we go. This is a jam. I'm using that same brush the whole time. It's basically an airbrush. You can paint amazing creatures on an airbrush. You can paint amazing creatures on Zbrush. It's exactly the same thing. I was never a great airbrush artist. I tried it. It was not my thing, but I always liked it. I'm just using this to kind of blend in these sections, this kind of color. And again, we're blocking in these colors, so this is not final color, but we're basically blocking in a graphic. You can ignore this. Oh, you can ignore this one. We're blocking in a graphic to figure out exactly what this character is going to look like. And I'm sure there will be some element of this pinkish fuchsia. I want to bring it up to the front here so that there's some reason to look at the face from a distance. Can you tell me how long a quick save on this model takes approximately? You had long quick save times and it pretty much stopped me from using Zbrush, especially on streams. Good question. It doesn't take me very long because I often will clear out my quick saves, which it can take into a part. I also lower the amount of time for my quick saves, and I also lower the amount of quick saves that I have. All that being said, in case you're not aware, you may be aware of this, but quick save takes into account everything that's in your project. It's saving a project. It's not saving a tool most of the time. So anything that's up here, it's saving. So if I have a sphere, you know, this pair of arms, which is 456 polygons, and it does a quick save, it's going to save this file, but it's also going to save this file, which is 15 million polygons. So it doesn't take very long, and often as soon as I see it, I hit escape to stop it from saving. I don't need that. I don't need it. Of course, I always, at some point in my life, regret not having it. So I say that now. All right, I think this is kind of getting there, meaning like this area is starting to work. Yeah, not saving your undo history. That's another good one. Thanks for chiming in. That's a huge thing. If it saves your undo history, you're looking at huge file sizes and times. We can definitely dial in this face. I think this is working. I think the transition from the head to the neck to the collar is working. The horns are not. Let's make them kind of the same, where they're making this color mostly, and then they can transition to this color near the tip. Maybe there'll be a stripe or something, but in general they're going to be pretty simple. Some spikes. Do I want those all? Do all the spikes need to have pink? No. No, they don't. Even this one? No, not even this one. I think it's better if this one doesn't. All right, I'm starting to like that. Let's get some more black in here. Really rich, deep purple. Maybe even more rich. That's interesting. It's much more saturated here. Huh. Kind of like that. I've just got this sort of super saturated purple on top. What we're really doing, you know, we can sit here and paint and sculpt and do all this stuff, but what this goal of this right now at least is to have a good idea of where it's going next. The processing and all that stuff took a little longer at the beginning of the stream than I hoped. So we're going to have to do a little bit of this off stream before next time. I feel like the transition to the, well, in general, like this needs to be dialed down so they're not all so big. And in some ways it needs to be bigger. This is kind of a pretty vacant area right now. Pretty boring. So I'm trying to figure out what I can do there. If anything. Maybe adding a little bit of color in like I just did. Let's do that mask by cavity again. By ambient occlusion. Invert it, hide it. Interesting. The idea of maybe making those crevices there. Of color. I kind of like that. Let's try this on a couple other things. Kind of liking this underlying bright color. It does feel like we need something still to point to the head. Something that would help separate it. And we can always shift to a new color. I don't really want to go red, but you could see how that would change that. This is obviously where I said the glow could come in. So if I come in, let me try to do a quick export, but I don't think we'll have time. I think I can create a glow in the face that will draw, or the chest or something that will create some light there. I think that'll look good. I think this is a good start though. It's brighter. It's bright. I wanted it to be bright. I think maybe toned in a little bit. Maybe, you know, the stuff on the arms could be worked up a little bit more. The how it's especially playing in these shoulders is maybe a little too basic. There's a lot of things that we could do to kind of tune this up. Let's do a mask one more time. That cavity. Maybe a little too intense. Just the idea that maybe there's these sort of pinks and purples. Feels like it's working. Yeah, even just bringing it into like the in-betweens of everything is actually working pretty well. You don't see it right away, but the before and afters actually are helping. And it's making it not feel just so, you know, one color. It's like even comparing this, just this one element, for example, right? If we just kind of, we'll save before I do this just in case there's any crashes. But if we go back after it saves, this is cool. I like, there's still elements of that I like. It might be worth bringing back that top again. Let's try that real quick and then we'll be done with the stream. Yeah, I think I'll work. I'll make this work. I think this will work. Now I can kind of take the existing pieces that they're painted and play around with them. And shape that a little bit more to something that feels slightly better for that too. So the design process isn't over. We're just moving into an area now where we're really thinking about it with color and everything all at once. So even like this, I think I might go to like black. All right, everybody, thank you so much for the stream today, for hanging out. I'm going to save this, and we're going to kill the stream in just a minute. We have a bunch of cool things going on for the rest of the year, so go ahead and check those out. We have, if you like creatures, we got creatures that are happening on Tuesday nights. This stream is on Wednesdays. We have a short being made in Unreal 5, which is happening on Fridays. We have a really great event tomorrow night, which I'll be hosting with Luca Nimalato. He'll be showing off his 3D concept art process and a bunch of other things. He's also been getting into Unreal, so check that out. And that will be from 7:30 to 9:30 Pacific time, so check that one out. And otherwise, if you got any other questions, let us know. Feel free to send us emails or hit us up on Instagram, any other social. That's awesome. But otherwise, thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I'll see you guys soon. Have a good one.